I married an old man for money and crossed a line I never should have. Before you roast me, understand this. I didn't fall into it like some accidental rom-com. It was a slow, quiet disaster that started with a look across a dinner table and ended with a signed divorce decree slid across a marble counter like a receipt. The worst part? When my husband found out, he didn't yell. He didn't cry. He just poured a drink, smiled like he already knew, and said, "Be careful who you think you're playing." I'm 24. I married Victor when he was 67. I'm not going to pretend it was a whirlwind love story. It wasn't. It was a decision. I grew up in the kind of nice neighborhood where every house looked fine from the street, but inside you could feel the stress in the walls. My mom could stretch a bag of rice into 5 meals and still apologize for it. My dad wasn't a villain, he was just tired, always tired, like life was a treadmill set one speed too fast. I learned early that security isn't romance. Security is your phone not getting shut off. Security is not waking up at 3 a.m. panicking about rent. Security is not pretending you're full because there's only enough food for your little sibling. So when Victor approached me at a charity event I was coordinating, black suit, silver hair, eyes that had seen everything, my brain didn't go, "OMG, handsome." My brain went, "This man could change my life." He didn't flirt the way younger men flirt. He didn't try to impress me. He asked questions like he was interviewing me for a position. "What do you want?" he said, leaning on the balcony rail while music floated up from the ballroom. I blinked. "That's direct?" "Life is direct," he replied. "People just decorate it with nonsense." I should have been offended. Instead, I felt oddly relieved. "I want stability," I said. He didn't smirk. He didn't shame me. He just nodded like I'd given the correct answer. "And what would you offer a man like me?" I hesitated, then said the quiet part out loud. "Youth, companionship, a wife who doesn't embarrass you." He held my gaze for a long moment. "Dinner," he said. Not a question. That was how it started. Not with butterflies, with clarity. Victor's world was polished, controlled. Everyone smiled at the right times. Everyone knew what fork to use. Everyone laughed a half second after Victor made a joke like he was the sun and they were planets orbiting his approval. The first time I went to his home, I kept my hands folded in my lap like a kid visiting a principal's office. Everything was expensive in a quiet way. No gaudy gold statues, no screaming rich, just inevitability. Like the house had always been there and always would be. Victor poured me wine. "You're nervous," he observed. "Am I that obvious?" "To people who are watching, yes." "Are you watching?" He smiled. "Always." I thought that was charming. I didn't realize it was a warning. Before he proposed, he insisted I meet his children. "There will be no surprises," he said. "My family doesn't like surprises." The meeting was a brunch at a private club where the staff moved like ghosts. I wore a conservative dress, pearls, a smile that made my cheeks hurt. Victor introduced me like he was presenting a business partner. "This is my wife-to-be." Not girlfriend, not someone special, wife-to-be. His eldest, Margaret, looked me up and down like she was appraising a handbag. His middle child, Andrew, offered a handshake like he was doing a chore. And then there was Daniel. Daniel was 30, tall, dark hair, eyes that didn't look away. When he shook my hand, his grip was warm and firm, not aggressive, just present. "'Tis nice to finally meet you," he said. "Finally?" I asked, trying to sound light. He glanced at his father. "Dad talks." Victor's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. I do not. Daniel's mouth twitched. "Sure." I laughed before I could stop myself, and Daniel's gaze snapped back at me like he'd found something interesting. That was the first moment I felt it, something electric, something wrong. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself he was just being polite. I told myself everything except the truth. Daniel didn't look at me like a future stepmother. He looked at me like a woman. Victor proposed a month later. No fireworks, no public spectacle, just a quiet dinner, his hand sliding a ring box across the table. "I assume you understand what this means," he said. Yes, I replied. And you're sure? Yes. He paused, then asked, do you want children? The question hit me like ice water. I I don't know. He nodded, unbothered. I have children. You will not be pressured. If you want them, we can discuss options. If you don't, we won't. He said it like he was discussing a garden renovation. I should have been grateful for the lack of pressure. Instead, I felt small, like I'd stepped into a life already built and I was just a decorative addition. Still, I said yes, because stability, because security, because I'd trained myself not to want more than what I could afford. The wedding was elegant, minimal, expensive enough to make headlines if anyone cared to look. I noticed Daniel watching me during the vows. Not smiling, not scowling, just watching, like he was trying to memorize the moment. After the ceremony, he hugged me. You look, he started, like I'm about to faint, I joked, because my whole body was buzzing. He shook his head. Like you don't know what you just signed up for. I pulled back, startled. Excuse me? Daniel's voice dropped. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just saying. My dad is complicated. Everyone is complicated, I snapped. Daniel's eyes softened. Not like him. Victor appeared then, slipping an arm around my waist like a possession. Everything all right? Victor asked. Daniel's expression turned smooth. Perfect. But his gaze lingered on Victor's hand on my waist. And I swear, just for a second, Daniel looked angry. Marriage to Victor was quiet. Not cold exactly, just distant. Victor was kind in the way some men are kind to things they value. He bought me books. He asked about my day. He praised me when I handled social events well. But intimacy wasn't natural between us. It felt scheduled, like another responsibility. One night, maybe a month in, I was brushing my hair in the bathroom when Victor walked in and said, "You're restless." I met his eyes in the mirror. Am I? Yes, he loosened his tie. You thought marrying money would feel different. My stomach clenched. That's not... He held up a hand. Don't insult me by pretending. I didn't marry you because you're my soulmate. The words should have hurt. Instead, they felt like permission. What did you marry me for? I asked. Victor's mouth curved. You're beautiful, you're smart, and you make me look alive. I stared. That's, he finished, honest. You like honest. I did, but honesty doesn't always make you feel safe. Sometimes it makes you feel replaceable. Daniel started coming around more after we married. At first, he'd drop by when Victor wasn't home. I'm just checking on the house, he'd say, like I didn't live there. Pretty sure the house is fine, I'd reply. He'd smirk. Not the house, you. That should have shut the door. Instead, I let him in. We'd sit in the kitchen, the big, perfect kitchen, and he'd talk like he couldn't help himself. You're not what I expected, he said one afternoon while I sliced lemons for iced tea. What did you expect? An evil gold digger with a spreadsheet? He laughed, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. I expected someone colder, someone who'd act like she owned the place the second she got a ring. I poured the tea and shrugged. I don't own anything. I'm just here. Daniel's gaze locked on me. That's the saddest thing you've said. I hated how that landed. I'm fine, I said, sharper than necessary. Daniel leaned on the counter, close enough that I could smell his cologne. No, you're not. I swallowed. And you know that because, he said quietly, because you keep trying to be perfect. People who are fine don't do that. If you've never lived around wealth, you don't understand the way it changes a room. People look at you differently. They treat you like you're fragile or suspicious or both. At Victor's dinners, women kissed my cheek and called me dear like I was a doll. Men shook my hand like I was a contract. And Victor watched it all like he was monitoring a market. Daniel was the only one who didn't pretend. One night, after a dinner party, I was in the hallway barefoot, carrying my heels, when Daniel appeared from the shadows. "You did well," he said. "Is that my performance review?" I tried to joke. Daniel's eyes flicked over my bare feet. "It's a warning." I stopped. "You love warnings." "No," he said, "I hate them. But no one warned you, so I will." I crossed my arms. "Warn me about exactly." Daniel's voice dropped. "Because I don't want you to get crushed." I stared at him. "And why do you care?" He held my gaze. His answer came out honest, raw. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The air between us snapped tight like a wire. I should have walked away. Instead, I whispered, "Daniel." And he said, "Tell me I'm wrong." I couldn't. The first time we kissed, it was late and quiet and felt like stepping off a cliff. Victor was out of town. The house was too still. I was in the library with a book I wasn't reading. Daniel came in like he belonged there. "You're up," he said. "So are you." He didn't sit. He just stood in front of me, hands at his sides, like he was restraining himself. "This is a bad idea," I said. "I know. You'll regret it." "I already regret not doing it sooner." That was the moment my brain screamed at me to stop. But my body didn't listen. His kiss wasn't frantic. It was controlled, almost careful, like he was afraid he'd scare me off if he moved too fast. When I pulled back, my heart was pounding. "This can't happen again," I whispered. Daniel nodded, breathing hard. "Okay." Then he rested his forehead against mine and said, "But it will." And it did. I won't write explicit details because that's not what this is about, but I'll say this. It wasn't just physical. Daniel didn't treat me like a trophy. He treated me like a person. He listened. He argued. He challenged me. He asked me what I wanted, really wanted. "What would you do if you weren't married to him?" he asked once, lying next to me in the guest room, the one Victor never used. I stared at the ceiling. "I don't know." Daniel rolled onto his side. "That's not true." I laughed weakly. "Okay, fine. I'd go back to school. I'd start a business. I'd travel without feeling like I'm borrowing someone else's life." Daniel's gaze was steady. "Then why aren't you doing those things?" "Because I'm married to your father," I said, like it was obvious. Daniel's voice sharpened. "And? That's your cage if you decide it is." That line followed me for weeks. Victor found out in the most Victor way possible. Not with a scream, not with tears, with paperwork. One evening, he asked me to come into his study. The study was Victor's kingdom. Dark wood, soft lighting, framed photos of his life, awards, handshakes with politicians, charity plaques, proof that he mattered. He poured 2 drinks without asking me. Then he slid a folder across the desk toward me. I didn't touch it. Victor said, "Open it." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were photos, timestamps, a hotel receipt, a report so detailed it made me nauseous. "You hired someone," I whispered. Victor took a sip of his drink. "I have people." I looked up, panicked. "Victor." He raised a hand, calm as ever. "Stop." I swallowed hard. "Are you angry?" Victor's eyes held mine. Anger is for people who feel powerless. My skin prickled. "So what do you feel?" He smiled, small, unreadable, amused, disappointed, curious. "Curious?" I echoed, stunned. Victor leaned back. I'm curious how long you thought you could do this without consequences. My throat tightened. I wasn't trying to. Don't explain, he said. I don't need the story. I know what this is. I whispered, It's your son. Victor's smile faded. Yes, that is the complication. I waited for him to explode. He didn't. He just set his glass down and said, Be discreet. I stared. That's it? Victor's eyes sharpened. Do you think I'm faithful? The question hit me like a slap. Victor's voice was smooth. I have women, quiet arrangements, discretion, consent. That is how my world works. I felt sick. So you don't care? Victor's gaze held mine. Care is a messy word. I care about stability, about reputation, about control. My voice cracked. And me? He paused, actually paused like he was considering how honest to be. You are safe here, he said finally. That is what you wanted, isn't it? Tears burned behind my eyes, and I hated myself for them. Yes, I whispered. Victor nodded. Then don't make me look foolish. That was the deal, and it was the moment I realized something terrifying. Victor didn't love me enough to be hurt. He loved his life enough to protect it. Daniel didn't handle the deal the way I did. When I told Victor he knew, Daniel went quiet. Too quiet. He didn't do anything? Daniel asked. No. Daniel laughed once, bitter. Of course he didn't. What does that mean? I snapped. Daniel's eyes were blazing. It means he never cared about you in the first place. That's not fair. It's accurate, he said, pacing the room. He's treating you like an accessory he can loan out. I flinched. Don't say that. Why? He demanded. Because it's ugly? Because it's true? I stood up, shaking. You don't get to turn this into some noble love story. I'm the one who married him. Daniel stopped pacing and looked at me like I'd slapped him. I know, he said quietly, and I hate that you had to. I stared. I didn't have to. Daniel's voice softened. You did. In your head, you did. You thought it was the only way to survive. My throat tightened, because he was too close to the truth. Daniel stepped closer. I'm not sharing you. I'm not yours to share, I snapped, but my voice lacked force. Daniel's jaw flexed. Then choose. That word, choose, hit me like a thunderclap. I wasn't used to being asked that. Victor didn't ask me to choose. He assumed he already had the upper hand. Daniel wasn't assuming. Daniel was demanding. A week later, Victor called me into his study again. He looked calm, but his calm had an edge now, like a blade hidden in velvet. Daniel spoke to me, he said. My stomach dropped. What did he say? Victor watched my face. He asked me to divorce you. I sucked in a breath. He did what? Victor's mouth twitched, like he found it almost funny. He believes he's rescuing you. I whispered. And what did he say? Victor swirled his drink. I asked him why he wants you. Heat rose in my face. That's none of his... Victor interrupted, still gentle. It's my business. You're my wife. The word wife sounded strange coming from him in that moment, like he was testing how it felt. I forced myself to ask, so what now? Victor leaned forward slightly. Now I decide whether keeping you benefits me more than letting you go. My mouth went dry. Benefits you. Victor didn't deny it. Then he said something that made my blood turn cold. Did you know Daniel has been asking about my will? My heart stopped. What? Victor's gaze was steady. Daniel has been curious about trusts, about succession, about how much Margaret and Andrew receive, about what happens if I remarry. I stared. Why are you telling me this? Victor's voice was soft, almost kind. Because you are not the only one with motives, my dear. A twist of nausea hit me. Was Daniel using me? I heard Daniel's voice in my head. I can't stop thinking about you. It felt real, but Victor's world didn't run on feelings. It ran on strategy. Victor watched me process it, then added, "Be careful." I whispered, "Are you threatening me?" Victor smiled faintly. "I don't threaten, I inform." That night, I confronted Daniel. I didn't do it softly, I didn't do it carefully, I did it like a woman who suddenly realized she might be the dumbest person in the room. "You asked about his will?" I demanded the second Daniel walked in. He froze. "What?" "Victor told me," I said, voice shaking. "He said you've been asking about trusts and succession." Daniel's face went hard. "He told you that?" "Yes," I snapped. "So tell me, am I some kind of leverage? A way for you to, what, prove a point? Get your inheritance early?" Daniel stared at me like I'd punched him. "You think I'm using you?" "I don't know what to think anymore," I shouted, "because I'm surrounded by people who treat life like a contract." Daniel's expression cracked, anger and hurt mixing. "I asked about the will because I'm not stupid, because my dad plays games, because if he decides to punish me, he'll do it with money, and yes, I wanted to know what he could do." My chest tightened. "So it's about money?" Daniel stepped closer, eyes intense. "It's about survival in my family. It's about understanding the weapon he always uses." I shook my head. "That doesn't make me feel better." Daniel's voice dropped. "Look at me." I forced myself to meet his eyes. He said, "I didn't plan to fall for you." I whispered, "People like you don't fall." Daniel's mouth twitched, sad. "You're right. I fought it. I denied it. And then you walked into my life wearing his ring, and you looked lonely, and I hated him for that." My throat tightened. Daniel's voice softened further. "I'm not proud of how this started, but I'm not lying to you about what I feel." I stared at him. "Then what do you want?" Daniel exhaled, like the answer cost him. "I want you out. I want you free, and I want him to stop owning everything in this house, including the air you breathe." He paused, then added, brutally honest, "And yes, I want you with me." I didn't sleep. Because for the first time since marrying Victor, I realized I had two prisons. Victor's prison was obvious: money, power, reputation. Daniel's prison was subtler: intensity, possessiveness, the dangerous thrill of being wanted. And I didn't know which one would destroy me faster. Plot twist number 1. Victor wasn't just seeing other women. Victor had a long-term arrangement with a woman named Celeste, someone who wasn't a secret to his circle, only to me. I found out because Celeste showed up at one of Victor's charity events and greeted him with the ease of someone who'd been in his life longer than I had. She approached me too, smiling politely. "You must be the wife," she said, like she was confirming an item on a list. My face burned. "Yes." Celeste tilted her head. "You're younger than I expected." I forced a smile. "And you are—" Celeste's lips curved slightly. "Someone who knows Victor." Then she leaned closer and whispered, sweet as poison, "He doesn't divorce women for infidelity. He divorces them when they stop being useful." She stepped back before I could respond, leaving me shaking with humiliation. Victor later acted like nothing happened. That night, I asked him, "Who is Celeste?" Victor didn't even blink. "A companion." "And I'm what?" I asked. He looked at me, calm. "A wife." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "That's not an answer." Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you want to renegotiate?" The word renegotiate made me feel sick. I wasn't his partner. I was his contract. Plot twist number 2. Margaret hated me enough to try to ruin me. A week after the charity event, a tabloid site posted blurry photos of me and Daniel leaving a hotel. No explicit content, no scandalous proof, just enough to spark rumors. The headline was disgusting. A scandal involving a wealthy family. My phone exploded. People I barely knew suddenly had opinions. Victor didn't call me. He didn't text me. He waited until I got home, then invited me into his study like it was another meeting. "You've been careless," he said. My hands shook. "I didn't leak that." Victor's gaze was cold. "I know." I blinked. "You know?" Victor slid another folder across the desk. Margaret did. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were screenshots of texts between Margaret and a reporter. Margaret: "She's embarrassing us. End it." Reporter: "Do you have proof?" Margaret: "I can get it. Daniel is sloppy when he's emotional." My stomach churned. "Your daughter?" Victor's voice was flat. "My daughter is protecting her interests." I whispered, "And you're not furious?" Victor looked at me like I was naive. Furious is not profitable. Tears stung my eyes. "So what happens now?" Victor leaned back. "Now we control the narrative." I stared. "How?" Victor's mouth curved. "I file for divorce." My heart stopped. "You're divorcing me?" Victor held my gaze. "Daniel asked, Margaret pushed, the press is sniffing, and I'm tired." I echoed. "Tired?" Victor's voice softened, almost human. "I wanted a quiet final chapter. Instead, I have a scandal." I swallowed. "So you'll just discard me?" Victor's eyes flashed. "Don't make yourself a victim. You chose this arrangement, too." He was right, but it still hurt. Plot twist number 3. Daniel didn't ask for the divorce out of pure love. He asked because Victor gave him an ultimatum. I didn't learn that until later, when everything was already falling apart. After the tabloid story, Daniel came to me furious. "This is Margaret," he said, pacing. "She's trying to destroy you." "I know," I whispered. "Victor showed me." Daniel froze. "He showed you?" "Yeah," I said, voice hollow. "He's filing for divorce." Daniel's face flickered. Relief, then guilt. "You wanted this," I said sharply, catching it. Daniel stopped pacing. "Yes." "And you're happy." Daniel looked pained. "I'm not happy about how." I narrowed my eyes. "What does that mean?" He hesitated. My stomach dropped. "Daniel, what does that mean?" He exhaled hard. "Dad gave me a choice." A cold wave washed over me. "What choice?" Daniel's eyes didn't flinch. "He told me if I didn't stop, he'd cut me out." My mouth went dry. "Out of what?" Daniel's eyes didn't flinch. "Everything." I stared at him in disbelief. "So you pushed for divorce because you were protecting your inheritance?" Daniel flinched. "No, I pushed for divorce because you didn't want to lose money?" I snapped, rage and humiliation exploding. Daniel stepped toward me. "That's not fair." "Oh, it's fair," I said, laughing bitterly. "It's exactly his world, his rules. Money is the leash and you're still on it." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You think I don't know that? You think I'm proud of it?" I crossed my arms, shaking. "Then tell me the truth. Was I ever anything more than a way to win against him?" Daniel's expression shattered. "Yes." He reached for my hand and I yanked it away. Daniel whispered, "I'm sorry." And for the first time, I believed he meant it, but believing didn't make it hurt less. The divorce happened fast. Victor didn't want drama. Victor didn't allow drama. His lawyers handled everything like a cleanup job. A settlement was offered that made my head spin, but it came with conditions. Confidentiality, no interviews, no public statements. I asked Victor one last time, "Did you ever care about me at all?" Victor's gaze lingered on me longer than usual. Then he said, "I cared about what you represented." I stared, devastated. Victor added, quieter, "And sometimes I enjoyed your company." That was the closest I would ever get to tenderness. After the divorce, I left the mansion. Not in tears, not in some dramatic storm-out scene. I left with boxes, a car, and a bank account that could finally breathe. Daniel wanted to move me in immediately. "You don't have to do this alone," he said, standing in my new apartment. Small, clean, mine. I looked around at the plain walls. "This is what alone looks like," I said, "and it's not terrible." Daniel stepped closer. "Let me help." I met his eyes. "If you're with me, Daniel, you don't get to half do it." He swallowed. "I'm not half doing anything." "Then hear me," I said, voice shaking but firm. "I'm not your rebellion against your father. I'm not your trophy. I'm not your therapy." Daniel's eyes were steady. "You're you." I stared at him. "And if your father snaps his fingers and offers you a better deal, money, approval, you don't get to trade me in." Daniel's jaw flexed. "He can keep his money," I scoffed. "That's easy to say when you've never had to live without it." Daniel flinched. I softened, just slightly. "Prove it." Daniel nodded once, sharp. "Okay." A month later, he did. Victor hosted a private family dinner. No press, no outsiders, just blood. Daniel went anyway, and he came back pale. "What happened?" I asked. Daniel sat on my couch, hands clenched. "He offered me everything back if I left you." My heart sank. "Daniel." Daniel looked up, eyes burning, and I said no. I stared. "You said no?" Daniel nodded, voice rough. He smiled like he expected it. Then he said, "Fine. Then you'll learn what it feels like to earn." I swallowed. "What did he do?" Daniel's laugh was humorless. He froze my trust access, cut me off from the family accounts. My mouth went dry. "Daniel?" He looked at me, almost shaking with adrenaline, and I've never felt more free. That was the moment something inside me shifted, because for the first time, Daniel wasn't just talking. He was paying the price. The next months were messy. Daniel moved into my apartment, not because it was glamorous, but because it was real. He applied for jobs without Victor's name attached. He got rejected, he got humbled. One night, he came home furious and dropped his resume on the table. "I have a finance degree," he snapped. "I have experience." I said quietly, "You have a last name." Daniel looked up. I continued, "And now you're learning that the last name was doing half the work." Daniel stared at the floor, then nodded. "Yeah." I watched him swallow his pride. It was the most attractive thing I'd ever seen. But the universe wasn't done twisting the knife. Plot twist number 4, I faced an unexpected pregnancy during the divorce. Before you panic, no, Victor and I weren't sleeping together often, but often isn't never, and biology doesn't care about timing the way your moral compass does. I found out when I was nauseous for a week straight and finally took a test at 2 a.m. Positive. I sat on the bathroom floor staring at that stupid little plus sign like it was laughing at me. Daniel knocked. "You okay?" I opened the door with shaking hands. "No." When he saw the test, his face went white. "Is it?" he started. I swallowed. "I don't know." Daniel's throat bobbed. "When was the last time you and—" "Don't," I whispered. "I can't talk about that." We went to a clinic. We did the math. The doctor said, gently, "It's difficult to be exact, but—" The timing made everything painfully complicated. I felt like my lungs stopped working. Daniel sat in silence the whole drive home, hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles went white. Finally, he said, "What do you want to do?" That question, "What do you want?" hit me harder than anything, because Victor never asked that. Daniel was asking. I whispered, "I don't know." Daniel pulled the car over, turned off the engine, and looked at me. "I'm not leaving you," he said, "but you get to decide what happens to your body and your life." Tears spilled down my face. "How are you being so calm?" Daniel's voice broke. "I'm not calm. I'm trying not to fall apart." I won't tell anyone what choice I made, because this isn't a political debate, and I'm not here to be dissected. I'll just say this. It was the hardest decision of my life, and Daniel held my hand through it, in a way Victor never would have. Afterward, Daniel sat with me on the couch while I stared at the wall, hollow. He whispered, "I'm here." I didn't answer. He didn't push. He just stayed. That was love, if I've ever seen it. A year after the divorce, the headlines stopped caring about me, which is the funniest part of Scandal. People act like your life is a movie until the next movie comes out. Victor remarried quietly. Someone age-appropriate, of course. Someone safe. Someone who wouldn't disrupt his image. Margaret got what she wanted, the family looking clean again. Daniel and I kept building something unclean, unpolished, and real. He got a job without his father's help. It didn't pay like Victor's world did, but he earned it. I went back to school part-time. I started a small online business, nothing flashy, just something that was mine. One night, Daniel came home and tossed an envelope on the counter. "What's this?" I asked. He looked exhausted. "A check." My stomach tightened. "From who?" Daniel exhaled. "My dad." I stared. "He's paying you again?" Daniel shook his head. "It's not for me." I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a check made out to me. A lot of money. Enough to buy a house, pay tuition, breathe for years. There was also a note, handwritten, short. "For your discretion and for the inconvenience, V." I stared at it, heart pounding. Daniel watched me. "He's trying to control you again." I swallowed. "Or he's trying to clean his conscience." Daniel laughed bitterly. "My father doesn't do conscience. He does PR." I sat down slowly, holding the check like it was a grenade. "What do I do?" I whispered. Daniel crouched in front of me. "What do you want?" I stared at him. "I want to keep it." Daniel's mouth twitched. "I know." I whispered. "And I want it not to mean he still owns me." Daniel nodded, eyes intense. "Then we take it, and we don't thank him." I swallowed hard. "Is that petty?" Daniel smiled, softer this time. "It's freedom." So, yes, I married an old rich man. I made a decision that destroyed my marriage. He viewed marriage as a transaction. His son pushed for divorce. His daughter tried to ruin me. His mistresses smiled in my face. His lawyers cleaned the mess like it was routine. And now? Now I'm dating someone who forced me to rebuild my life from zero. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Victor's last real warning to me, the one that started this whole spiral. Be careful who you think you're playing. Because I used to think I was playing Victor. Then I thought Daniel was playing me. Now I realize the truth? They were all playing. And I survived because I finally stopped pretending I didn't have a choice. If you're going to judge me, fine. But at least judge the right thing. Not that I married for money. Not even that I cheated. Judge the fact that in a world where everyone treated me like an asset, I fought my way back into being a person.